Everyone. Welcome to yet another amazing webinar organized by IBG. My name is Dipesh Deshmukh and I represent IBG. IBG is India Business Group. For people who are tuning in for the first time, a very brief introduction about India Business Group. It was formed about 7 years ago by none other than Mr. Vikash Mittal Sen. He's the founding president of IBG. And the entire focus is on how to help our members in getting connects, in getting business, national as well as international. We have over 1,000 active members and we have a huge database of over 80,000 people just in Mumbai. So our members get a lot of mileage when it comes to doing business. As I said, it was founded by Mr. Vikash Mittal Sen, who's a big business guru. He helps all our members, treats us like family. He has an open door policy. You can anytime take an appointment and walk into his office, or now you can have a Zoom meeting with him. And he's there always to mentor us. So Vikash, can you just quickly say hi to everyone?
Hello. I've kept myself on till then.
Yes. I'll have you speak later at the end. Thank you, Vikash. Yeah. And we also have with us our CEO, Ms. Priya Pansare. Priya, can you say hi to everyone? You're not able to.
Good morning everyone, and good morning to Mr. Wadhwa. We welcome you on IBG's platform. I'm very looking forward to listening to you. I'm sure our audience is also quite excited to have you today over here. And thanks a lot.
Thank you, Priya. We also have two very important people with us, Girish and Siddhi, who help all our members tirelessly. So big thank you to Girish and Siddhi. Before we bring on our today's speaker, once again, quick request, everyone is going to be on mute. I request people to stay off their videos, and any questions you all have, even while the webinar is going on, you all can type in the chat box and I will ask the questions to Mr. Ashok later at the end. All right. Also, once again, people who have joined in for the first time, if you can type in the chat box your name, mobile number and email address, we will be more than delighted to help you with the future events and webinars and stuff like that. So with that, I am absolutely excited and happy to introduce today's speaker, Mr. Ashok Wadhwa. He's the Group CEO of Ambit. Mr. Wadhwa founded Ambit in 1997 and has been responsible for building Ambit into one of India's premier investment banks. Before that, it was Ambit RSM, which was taken over by PricewaterhouseCoopers in the year 2007. He is recipient of several awards, including Priyadarshini Academy's prestigious award for outstanding contribution in the field of financial management. Before founding Ambit, Mr. Wadhwa was the managing partner of Arthur Andersen Mumbai. He is also very active in industry forums and has in the past served as president of Bombay Chambers of Commerce and Industry, BCCI, member and managing committee, Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce, FICCI, and also member and managing committee, member of Young Presidents Organization, or YPO is what people know it by. Mr. Wadhwa is chartered accountant and law graduate from University of Mumbai, and he's also the honorary counsel of Republic of Guatemala. So with that introduction, I mean, I've just kept it short. He's got a big list of introduction, but I'm absolutely delighted and happy that he's amongst us. And Ashok, welcome from IBG.
Thank you, Dipesh. Thank you, Priya. Thank you, Vikash, for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to talk to your members in IBG. The subject of discussion today is regarding COVID. What does it mean and what will it mean as we go forward? And for the purpose of the next 20 minutes, I'm going to divide my discussion into two broad pockets. COVID now as we see it and as it is happening, and COVID after, what we call the post-COVID era. At some point of time, COVID will come to an end, and what happens after that. And again, I'll divide it into three broad baskets: health and healthcare, economy, and stock market, both on the pre side as well as the post side. I'll try and cover this in about 20 minutes, after which it should give us adequate time for a dialogue. So let's talk about COVID and government's reaction. When I talk about the health side, there have been two big debates. One is, was the lockdown needed? And the Prime Minister, when he spoke to us before the first lockdown on 22nd of March, said, "Jaan hai to jahan hai." And then, of course, a bunch of economists since then have been critical, and their mantra has been, if you don't have livelihood, you don't have life. So their mantra has been livelihood over life. If there is livelihood, there will be life, and if there is no livelihood, there'll be no life. We all have the benefit of hindsight. Decision makers have to take the decision on spot, and then critiques and commentators like all of us have the benefit of hindsight, which gives us an undue advantage. But here is what I will say, that I think our government and our Prime Minister, recognizing that India has a very diverse and dense population, apart from being a very large population, took the right decision of an early and sustained lockdown. The mantra of "Jaan hai to jahan hai" was, in my view, in Indian context, significantly more relevant. We keep comparing with Germany and say, look how Germany did it, or with Sweden and how Sweden did it. I think it's an inapt comparison, ladies and gentlemen. India has its own unique challenges. I don't think there is another country in the world which has the density of population, the size of population, the diversity of population. And if I even add perhaps the level of illiteracy that we have, if we did not have a immediate lockdown and for a prolonged period of time, I think our meager healthcare and our health centers would just not have been able to cope with the challenges that this pandemic would have thrown. I remember in mid-March or early April, receiving a message from a very dear friend in Italy. I wrote to him asking about the welfare. And now Italy is supposed to be a developed nation with a very developed healthcare system. And the only message he said is that Milan is an open cemetery. There is not enough place in the cemeteries in Milan to be able to bury the number of people who are dead. So Milan had become an open cemetery. Think about it in that context, ladies and gentlemen. If we had not announced a lockdown, we would have had bodies lying around on the street. So I absolutely and totally agree with our government and our Prime Minister on not just an early lockdown, but a sustained lockdown. I think today we are benefiting from a relatively lower density of healthcare challenges because of that early decision. Yes, I'm not denying the fact that this lockdown is costing us in terms of our economic growth, development, employment, and therefore eventually, what does it do to Indian economy and to our people? But as Prime Minister said, "Jaan hai to jahan hai," I would totally concur with him. Having said that, there were a couple of things. One which got us completely blindsided. All of us have grown up thinking about white collar label and blue collar label. What we didn't realize until unfortunate pandemic happened was that there was also a no-collared population. And the no-collared population, in my view, I would define as the unfortunate migrants for whom none of us had even a thought. We were just not able to conceive. There was no preparatory work done. It was almost as if they were non-existent. And one fine day when we saw them on the streets of Bombay, we realized, my God, we had missed a very large population that is going to be affected by this pandemic. I don't blame anybody. It's not that the government missed it or the policymakers missed it. The NGOs missed it. The private citizens missed it. The employers missed it. We all missed it completely. We were completely blindsided to this no-collar community, which now is termed as migrant labor. And that plays such an important part in our day-to-day life. And they really suffered as a result of this pandemic. The one miss, I would say, from government's size was inability to announce a seriously large package which would have helped industry, particular small and medium enterprise industry. Yes, they announced a 3 lakh crore package, which allows NBFCs and banks to lend to SMEs and MSEs. But honestly, that package was seriously inadequate looking at the size of the challenge. And in particular, having accepted that the lockdown was a good idea, I wish the government had been more generous. I'm not disregarding the fact that government's finances are under a stress. I'm not disregarding the fact that the government is rightly concerned about our rating. But I think a larger support package at that point of time may have eased some of the challenges that we are facing today and may have made this lockdown a little less stressful. What were the challenges? What have been the challenges on the economy through this COVID period? I would say for sure, we are into a negative growth territory. We closed the year 2020 at a GDP growth of 4.1, 4.2, which anyway was far below par for the course. And with the impact of this pandemic, there is no doubt that we will degrow this year. There are different people who have different expectations. Some say we will degrow by 2%, some say 5%, some say 10%. I think it will be suffice to say that it will be a high single-digit degrowth number in the current year. And degrowth will throw up its own challenges, as we can see. It is causing unemployment, and it will continue to cause greater unemployment. It will cause stress in the economy. We have to learn to deal with that stress, whether we like it or not. Are there any particular industries that have benefited from this pandemic? You know, the world is always full of opportunities and threats. And it is my belief that no event comes with its fair share of ups and without its fair share of downs. The ups in this point of time have been the digital industry, the whole internet-based business, e-commerce business. We are seeing the success of Jio. We are seeing the vision of one man play out so brilliantly in this unfortunate era. But it goes to show that when you take risk and you have a vision, time and circumstances will always come to support you. So I would argue that the whole eco environment around digitization, e-commerce is going to be a very big beneficiary, has been a beneficiary. The fact that today we are talking on this seminar across different parts of the city of Bombay, perhaps elsewhere, is itself an indication of how much premium on technology as a result of this pandemic. The pharma industry, interestingly did not participate any part of the stock market rally from 2005. We've seen 3 stock market rallies, but the pharma industry did not participate in that. And suddenly the pharma industry is in the limelight. At the end of the day, what this pandemic says is health and healthcare are critical, and who provides health and healthcare? It's pharma and healthcare industry. So I would argue that pharma has been a beneficiary out of this. Chemicals, particularly specialty chemicals, in particular businesses that are making intermediaries for the pharma industry, big beneficiaries. We did a QIP for a company called PI Industries. We were a little uncertain whether this was a good time to take that capital market transaction out. But, although it was a 2,000 crore raise, the demand was 11,000 crores, ladies and gentlemen. So that shows that the world is looking at India and looking at certain sectors very, 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 very positively. Let's just move very quickly to consumption. I mean, there is no debate about the fact that, consumer discretionary businesses have been very badly affected through this period, whether it is apparels, whether it is fashion, whether it is restaurants, whether it is hotels, salons, the whole consumer discretionary spend has been very badly affected as a result of this pandemic. And I dare say that that's the way situation will be for a period of time. Very quickly on the stock market, why is the stock market continuing to move? We are the most expensive stock market in the world today, not just in the emerging segments. We are now trading at 23 times future earnings, 23, 24 times future earnings, which makes us the most expensive stock market. Why is the market rallying when the GDP is showing signals of degrowth? I think 2 or 3 reasons. First, the world is flushed with liquidity. I mean, the United States, the European Union, Japan, the amount of money that they are printing, the amount of liquidity that they have pushed into their economies in an effort to grow out of this pandemic provides the world with huge amount of liquidity. Emerging markets get their fair share of liquidity. In the emerging markets, India continues to be seen as an attractive destination, and therefore there is large doses of capital which are flowing into our Indian market. Number one. Number two, I would argue that, you know, when we look at the stock market, don't look at the stock market, don't look at this rally as a very broad-based rally. You know, we think that every day Nifty goes up, the stock market is going up. Well, Nifty is constituted by 50 stocks. The market is constituted by 3,000 stocks. And even within the Nifty, I would argue, if you were to take out the weightage of Reliance, the two HDFC Twins, Kotak, perhaps Hindustan Lever, ITC, you will see that the Nifty is also not growing at the same pace as appears on the screen of the television every day. So this is not a very broad-based rally. It is a narrow rally. The rally is supporting certain stocks, certain segments, and certainly supporting quality stocks. The one thing I can tell you that a pandemic like this does is it pushes capital and liquidity towards quality. And therefore, those that are quality will get a disproportionate amount of allocation. Those that are seen as poor quality will really start dropping on a daily basis. So you'll have 52 weeks high for some, and you'll have 52 weeks for the others within the same segment. Therefore, telling us that the segment is important, but even more important is the quality of the company, the quality of the governance, the quality of the management, and the manner in which the companies allocate capital. So I would argue that that piece should remain quite intact in your mind. The last piece which worries me a little in this pandemic, during this pandemic, is the retail participation in the market. You know, the average market volumes are about 45,000 crores, and they have moved to 65,000 crores. And all of this additional trading volumes have come out of retail participation. It worries me a little because, you know, when retail starts participating in that large quantum and starts pushing stock prices, when the broad fundamentals may not necessarily be fully supportive, it worries me because, you know, injury to retail is ultimately the last thing anybody wants. We want our retail investors to participate and benefit and not be indiscreet in their investment cycle. So that's the perhaps one slow warning I would provide to my colleagues in the retail market. Be careful, be cautious as you look at investing and becoming rich through the stock market. Let's quickly go through the post-COVID scenario. I'm a genuine believer that the world has enough science and enough talent for there to be a vaccine in the foreseeable future. I have immense amount of respect, and I hold the Poonawalla family in very high esteem. And when they say that they will find a solution in the foreseeable future, that's all over the newspapers this morning, ladies and gentlemen. I believe that there will be a solution sooner rather than later. Whether there will be one comprehensive vaccine that will solve all the problems, or this particular pandemic and this particular virus will have several strains which will require us to modify our vaccine from time to time, I don't know. But I would say this, that over the next 12, 24 months, the world and science will find a comprehensive solution for this particular pandemic. And therefore, in that sense, the danger to us is in that sense, hopefully only short-lived. But one thing we have to remember, that this pandemic is going to leave a very strong mark and will be a reminder to us on importance and premium to health and healthcare. I don't know how many of you remember, today we don't complain about long lines before we board a flight. All of it happened because of 9/11. Before 9/11, there was no such scrutiny. You could walk in and out of a plane literally at the last minute. Today, it's become a part of our life. We don't complain about it anymore. Similarly, unfortunate events in Bombay City have made sure that there is a long queue of cars when you want to go into a hotel or into any event that is for public organization or for public consumption. Similarly, this pandemic will change the way we live life. There will be a huge amount of premium on health. For example, I don't think we are going to get rid of the sanitizer during at least my lifetime. Sanitizer has become a part and parcel of our daily routine. My friend Anil Rai Gupta was telling me that they have started from Havells. He runs the company called Havells. They have started focusing on dishwashers and trimmers. You know why? Because since the time migrant workers have gone away, Nobody expects all of them to come back. They have been very badly hurt by this pandemic, and it will be a time before they come back, which means there'll be a shortage on the supply side for domestic staff. Equally, we are also conscious about social distancing now, that we will be a little reluctant to bring in extra members into our house. We all will have to do that little extra in the kitchen that we didn't do in the past, which means dishwashers and automated machines are going to become more prevalent in Indian culture than they have been historically. So these are permanent changes that will happen in our thinking, in our well-being. You're going to be consuming more organic food than chemically treated food, because that's what this pandemic will teach us and leave us with. So there are some changes which will be permanent changes. There will be a significantly greater focus on insurance and health insurance and medical insurance and life insurance. These are permanent changes, ladies and gentlemen. Whether we like it or not, I repeat, this pandemic will leave its imprint on us for a long period of time. Some things will ease out quicker. We will get back to accepting the new way of life. Some things will remain there for a very long time and will probably change our consumption habits. Look at meetings, look at travel. I used to travel at the shortest notice to go meet clients in Delhi or to go meet clients in Hyderabad, London, elsewhere. We don't need to do that anymore. Technology, and with now GeoMeet coming on board, we are going to be able to conduct at least half our meetings, on the computer. I have no doubts that work from home will become a part and parcel of the whole service industry culture. The IT industry has led it from front, but financial services industry will also follow suit. I'm not saying that we will have people permanently working from home, but we will have a rotational policy whereby people don't need to come to office for more than 3 days in a week. It may not be purely because we are worried about the pandemic. Vaccine would have treated us, but it will be because we will care about our people, and our people will care about it. And there'll be employees who will come to us and say, you know what, I'm happy to take a 20% reduction in salary, but I want to work half the time from home because traveling is a big stress and strain, and it deprives me of more family time. So I think these changes as a result of pandemic will become permanent changes in our life, ladies and gentlemen. What about the economy? How do I see the economy going forward, and where do I see the economy moving? Very quickly, I think the government has to do something to support consumption. Whether eventually it is some form of GST tax reduction or some form of other concession, I think we will need to understand and support the consumption machinery. At a time when private sector investment is already down to very small, at a time when there is anyway not significant amount of private capital available in India, consumption is the most important engine, and the government will have to do whatever it takes to propel that engine as soon as we come out of this pandemic. So I do see government providing ongoing support, as I said, whether it is by way of reduction in GST taxes, some form of one-time concession, but I do see the government stepping up to bring to provide greater support and help consume faster. I think FDI is the other big area. Given lack of domestic private capital, I think a lot of Indian businesses are going to be funded by global capital, and there's nothing wrong in that, ladies and gentlemen. Atmanirbhar doesn't mean that we shouldn't access what we don't have. Atmanirbhar means we should access what we don't have so that we can build what then gives us a long-term sustainable advantage. I think with the challenge that China is going to face, partly because of politics with India, partly because of the geopolitical problem with India, and partly because of the pandemic and the perception that this pandemic has left, I personally believe this is a big opportunity for many, many global companies to move their supply chain to India. It's also a great opportunity for a lot of Indian promoters, as we are seeing. Look at what the banning on TikTok has done. It has created 4 new apps in India: Mitro, Chingari, and 3 others. And given the talent in India, given the capability in India, given the entrepreneurial spirit of India, I think bringing in private capital from overseas will only fast forward that whole build-up. And I would like to believe that the government is doing everything possible to support that. The only two suggestions I had for the government was, you brought the tax rates down. You have made it easy for sovereign funds and pension funds to invest in India on a capital gains free basis, completely tax free basis. But if you don't make land available and you don't change reforms related to labor, then this big opportunity of making India a possible competitor to Vietnam, small Vietnam is competing with us. We can actually make India the manufacturing hub next to China. Of course, we can't compete with China and what they have achieved, but we can certainly become a smaller substitute to China. And that itself will mean huge number of new jobs and employment opportunities, which is critical for India. Banking system. I very much worry about the banking system, both the para-banking system, NBFCs, and the banking system. Once the moratorium is released and once we are back to a normal time frame, I worry about whether India's credit culture has been badly broken. When you tell people that you don't have to pay your lenders for 6 months or 9 months, you have created a change in the pattern. I'm not saying that the government had a choice. It was really a Hobson's choice. And the government chose what they had to do. But unfortunately, we need to see what it does to the whole credit culture in the country. I worry that many SMEs will default to their lenders, and that will, of course, on the one side give rise to litigation, but on the other side, it will mean significant dent in the whole balance sheet of financial service companies. Ladies and gentlemen, these are times which offer phenomenal opportunities to capable, well-run businesses. Many businesses are going to suffer, but many businesses are going to prosper. Whether you suffer or you prosper will depend upon whether you have built your businesses on the back of strong capital or poor debt. Over-leveraged balance sheets are the worst thing that can happen in a pandemic like this. And when I say strong balance sheet does not mean just low average. Strong balance sheet also means liquid assets. So my very strong suggestion to everybody is focus less on debt, raise equity. Raise equity at any price. Even if you think that your price is cheap, doesn't matter. Raising equity at a relatively cheap price is cheaper than raising debt at this point of time, because those who are significantly debt dependent will find very difficult time. They are the ones who are going to get very badly affected when COVID-19 finishes. And those who have built their businesses with strong balance sheet, why do you think Mr. Ambani is going out to raise so much capital and repaying debt in such a hurry? Because he recognizes that when this pandemic finishes, there will be so many opportunities to acquire businesses and assets at relatively cheaper valuations. But for that, you have to have a strong balance sheet, and strong balance sheet is not just non-leveraged balance sheet, but it also means assets that can be easily liquidated so that you can use that liquidity to acquire what suits you. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'll pause over here and I'll move on to Deepesh. I think I've done my 20-25 minutes. Open to questions and happy to answer anything else that you may throw at me.
Yes, Ashok. And it was really a delight to hear so many insights from you. And I think what struck me the most is the changes that will be permanent, which is true. This pandemic has taught us a lot. And yes, the travel will reduce and working from home. A lot of things will be permanent in our lives. And you also said that just now that a lot of businesses will definitely suffer. So my question to you, based on that last point that you made, is which sectors do you think have been most affected because of the pandemic, and how do you think these businesses can revive?
So Deepesh, before I answer that question, I think the overriding point was the last point which I made, which is honestly, it's not just about sectors. It's about your own business.
Right.
I mean, there will be wonderful sectors that throw up many opportunities, but within those sectors, there'll be companies that just can't capitalize because they have built their businesses on a relatively weak model.
True.
In the ultimate analysis, what will really benefit and what will decide winners and losers is your balance sheet strong? In this country in particular, and I won't say this is not true in the world, but in this country in particular, we've been so focused on P&L because we believe it's P&L that delivers valuation. And we Indians are very focused on valuation of our companies on the stock market. I would argue and say, and dare say, that this is a time when P&L is less important. What is important is to have solid, sustainable balance sheet that has low leverage and lots of liquidity. Now, within that, obviously, there are bound to be some winners and there are bound to be some losers. As I said, the whole internet segment, the whole e-commerce segment, digitization are going to be big winners. Whether the pandemic finishes in 6 months or 12 months, the habits that we have formed, nobody will want to go to the bank ever again because everything is going to happen on digitally. As I said, number of meetings that we do are going to come down by 50%. So going to coffee shops or hotels, sitting in restaurants or flying around, here are the industries that are going to have a significant impact. And I'm not saying that these industries will not reinvent themselves, but they will be forced to reinvent themselves. Whether it means that number of airlines flying around reduce because there is a consolidation, or whether it means that the number of restaurants shut down or create a new format, very difficult. Even within those segments, there will be some that will thrive, but they will have to reinvent themselves. And the reinvention will have to be on the basis of what the new human psychology is. Are we going to be seeing big restaurants with lots of people and converging towards a bar? Not in the foreseeable future. Are we going to see lots of restaurants serving good quality food, organic food with adequate distancing and nice cushions between different tables? Absolutely yes. It is going to make restaurants, hotels, airlines, movie theaters think very differently. But we're not going to see, I remember as I was growing up, when the video system came in, for 3 or 4 years, I never went to see a movie in a movie hall. But the video system went away, got replaced by a disc. The disc went away, got replaced by a television. We are all back to going to PVRs and Inoxes, and PVRs and Inoxes have upgraded themselves and today are charging, significant premium. So human habits alter, but there is a way to bring them back. And I would argue that many of these discretionary spends will certainly reinvent themselves. Look at office apparels. If I'm not going to office, if I'm working from home, I really don't need to buy formal shirts on a daily basis. Think about the number of formal wear shirts that brands that prevail in this country. Will all of them survive? Unlikely that all of them survive. Will some of them survive? Some of them will thrive, because those who don't survive, obviously the supply goes up, the demand doesn't go out proportionately. So the demand converges to those who thrive, those who survive, and then they start thriving. So I would argue that each segment will have its winners and losers. But in the short run, I will tell you that the places where we see significant opportunity is clearly the pharma space, the healthcare space, the hygiene space. As the consumer durable companies are finding out, they will shift from one product to the second product because there's more demand for, as I said, trimmers and dishwashers and dryers versus just washing machines. So there will be a shift in demand. There will be winners across all segments. But I would say that India has a unique opportunity at this point of time. The two things that I must say is that this pandemic has brought back to fore one issue, that agri is a very important constituent of our growth cycle. We were an agri economy. For a period of time, the contribution of agri to our GDP fell significantly low, below 15%. I see the whole agri and agri processing economy moving up significantly. And there again, I have to compliment the government for the set of reforms that they introduced, disintermediating the whole mandi system, allowing the farmer to sell the product directly to the consumer, creating a slew of warehouses and cold chains, removing the pricing limitations. I think those set of reforms that the government has made are outstanding and will augur very well. So I would put a lot of emphasis on agri and agri-related businesses. They have a very, very bright future in a country like India, and I think they will grow rapidly. The other area where I said, where I think there will be a unique opportunity is wherever India can become a substitute for Chinese manufacturing. Chemicals, science, chemistry, all of these areas, we have superb talent. We just need to now focus on leveraging the talent and building new businesses.
Cool, cool. The next thing that I wanted to ask you was, given the current worldview on China, does India get a new opportunity to attract larger doses of capital? And which sectors you think will benefit from this?
So, you know, obviously China has a scale that is incomparable at this point of time. I don't think the world can dispense with China because the supply chain, the world is dependent on China for its supply chain. But what this pandemic has done is has created adequate amount of suspicion about totally relying on China. There was a time when where companies would not think beyond China. If they had large capacity, they wanted to grow larger. There were no alternatives to China at one point of time. I think this pandemic and the suspicion that it has created is going to give an opportunity to other countries to become an alternate supply chain to China. We can't substitute China, but we can become an additional supply chain to China. At this stage, at this early stage, it looks like places like Vietnam and Cambodia seem to have taken an early march because the process there is relatively easy. Our government and Prime Minister has been focusing a lot on ease of doing business in India. But despite that focus, I would continue to say that setting up industry in India is more difficult than setting it up in Vietnam or in Cambodia or some of the other Far East nations. Therefore, India has to compete. What India has is high quality talent. What India has is abundance of labor. What India has, engineers and scientists par excellence. And what India has is the benefit of law and language, which allows global capital enough and more comfort to India. But that capital will not flow to India just because India has these attributes. That capital will flow to India when we set rules, expand our vision, and create an invitation for that capital to come to India. To that extent, some of the changes that the government has made over the last 12 months are exemplary. For example, our finance minister's vision of reducing the tax rate to 15%, which was announced last year in September. Nobody knew in September that there's going to be a pandemic. But if I just recollect what the finance minister said, in a desire to encourage foreign companies to set up manufacturing base in India, we are reducing the tax rate for new manufacturing businesses set up in India to 15%. Now that's a phenomenally competitive tax rate. It should provide natural fiscal incentive for large companies. And mind you, it was done at a time when there was no talk about pandemic. I mean, the pandemic came into existence at the earliest in December, January. This announcement was made by the finance minister when the prime minister was going to Houston, I remember. So August, September of last year. That's a very positive step. Similarly, recently government announced that sovereign funds and pension funds, long-term capital, will be allowed to invest in India dividend-free, tax-free, capital gains-free, and interest-free. That's a big incentive. These are large pools of capital that can come to India and provide an opportunity for investment in India. I think the two important things that the government needs to follow on are, one, as I said earlier, some rule on land allocation. Acquisition of land has to become significantly simpler, and there has to be a body that will make this land not just available, but facilitate the setting up of businesses. If the companies still have to go through 30, 40, 50 approvals and the bureaucracy stifles them, I think we have lost the opportunity. So we need to create ease of business in setting up businesses in India, in acquisition of land, and the other one is, as I said, labor. I think we need to come out with some sort of regulation which says that these companies that are relocating to India, they're manufacturing businesses in India and creating huge number of jobs in India, I think should be provided a completely new labor regime, which allows them to not worry about India's infamous labor regulation. I think if these two are done, then you will see significant manufacturing relocate to India. What are the sectors where India has a competitive advantage? Wherever there is science and engineering. So auto components, engineering components, chemistry, chemicals, pharma intermediaries, agrochemical intermediaries. These are natural places where India has, as I said, advantage of capability, advantage of very high level of engineering and chemical capability, chemistry capability. And anyway, India, these are high value products. So these are the ones that are going to generate value for India, I would argue.
Interesting. So before I take questions from people, one last question from my end, because it's of my personal interest. I'm just tired of sitting at home. I think it's just me. I'm sure everyone else is having a good time, but I am really keen to travel. So you're the Honorary Consul General. So an obvious question to you, when are the consulates opening and when are the countries opening to let us in?
So, this question has two sides to it. When are the countries opening and who are they allowing to travel?
Mm-hmm.
Those are two different questions. So Germany is now open. Germany is fully open, right? France is fully open. The question is, who are they allowing to travel in and who are they not allowing to travel in? I would argue that given the effect of the pandemic in India, and listen, on a per population basis, the effect is marginal. We've not been badly affected. I mean, on a per million basis, we are perhaps one of the least affected countries. But given the number of people and the number of people who will want to travel, it's a very large population of infected people, right? So I would argue that, we Indians, we may have some restrictions in terms of how many countries are willing to allow us to travel to their country without some element of quarantine. We have to wait and see how the rules get framed out. Thankfully, the air bubble between India and France has already started operating. The air bubble between India and United States has already started operating. I'm told the air bubble between India and Germany is going to start sometimes during the course of next week. UK is next in the queue, I'm sure. UAE will be there, Dubai will be there, Singapore will be there. So some of these countries have already opened up. Guatemala, for example, is not shut for tourist traffic. Very welcome to. Visas are issued through our offices in Delhi, the ambassador sits in Delhi. Not a problem. The challenge is the country from where you're originating. And again, unfortunately, given that India comes in the top 3 of number of infected people on coronavirus, there will be some rules, there will be some distinction, there will be some protection that the inviting country will impose. My own sense is that once the first vaccine is out in the market and there is ability to get administered, that may become the first big barrier to kind of create a common definition of who is allowed to enter which country. If you're a vaccinated individual, it shouldn't matter where you come from, whether you come from India or China or it doesn't matter. And that we know is at least 3 to 4 months away. In this interim period, there will be select travel. Air bubble arrangements will be made. We all would love to travel. This is the time of year when we are all enjoying the European summer and watching some sport or the other, sitting in London. Now we watch it on television. Thank goodness, at least cricket has begun. We are watching the England-West Indies game. I'm sure we are all cricket starved, so everybody's glued to his television when England and West Indies are playing, although they are not the 2 best teams in the world. But listen, life will come back to normal. It's only a matter of time.
Well, thanks for giving us the hope. So I'm going to take a few questions. I know we'll run out of time, but whatever we can. But before I start taking these questions, guys, once again, people who are here for the first time, who have joined in later, please type your name, mobile number, and email address in the chat box so we can give you IBG updates and details of the next events and stuff like that. Okay. So Vikash is asking, do you think it's safe to keep money in the banking system?
Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. I mean, again, let's divide the banking system into 2 parts: public sector banks and private sector banks.
Sure.
Let me start with the private sector banks. I think generally private sector banks are adequately capitalized. Number one. Number two, Reserve Bank of India has a unique record. They have never ever let depositors lose their money, even if the bank has gone through some troubled times. Go back to GTB. GTB was a bankrupt bank. They created a moratorium and they merged it with ICICI Bank at that time. Go back to Centurion Bank, not Centurion Bank, yeah, Deva Ahuja. They recapitalized it, found a mechanism, and all the depositors were protected. Come more recently to Yes Bank. The government found an outstanding solution, and I have no doubts that in years to come, Yes Bank will thrive and become a super successful bank. So I would argue that certainly you don't have to worry about that. As far as public sector banks are concerned, I mean, if RBI is going to stand behind private sector banks and ensure that depositors don't lose money, you have RBI and the government standing behind public sector banks. I know each time there is a debt fund that goes out of fashion or there is stress in a banking system, there is flight of deposits from that system. But I would believe that India has a unique history of never letting depositors suffer. And we should be very proud and feel safe about it.
All right. Somebody added a question. Do you recommend HDFC to park money?
You know, I mean, listen, HDFC, Kotak, Axis, IndusInd, these are all outstanding banks. Wherever you feel comfortable, I think your money is safe and your money will prosper.
Cool. I'm just going through the questions. Some questions you've already answered, hence I'm not going to ask. In your opinion, which are the two countries that have handled the current pandemic well, both economically and socially? What are the learnings for India?
So you know, there's a very interesting article in the Times of India today by Ruchir Sharma. It's an editorial. You should read that article. It talks about who will be the biggest gainer out of this pandemic. It won't be China and it won't be United States. He identifies Germany. It's an article worth going, but just to quote Ruchir out of that article, Germany, you know, took this very seriously. First, I mean, Germany had the benefit of having a super infrastructure, great healthcare system, you know, and relatively well-trained people in terms of how to take advantage. Germany is fully open for business. Germany is growing. Their economy is one of the rare economies that will actually show a growth in the current year, despite the pandemic. I would argue that the manner in which the German politicians, the German policymakers, the German public in general have handled the pandemic is exemplary, absolutely exemplary. So if there's one country that will come out ahead of everybody else in terms of coming out of the pandemic, dealing with the pandemic, but also economic ability to thrive economically and be able to you know, benefit from stress in assets everywhere else in the world, German companies will be big acquirers of business going forward. And therefore, if any of you are looking at selling your businesses, think of a German acquirer. He's positioned best, particularly in the whole manufacturing segment. The other country that I would say that has done a remarkable job is New Zealand. Truly remarkable. If you look at the manner in which the Prime Minister of New Zealand has been, you know, reaching out to people and done a great job. I agree it's a little distant geographically, but don't forget that there is a lot of travel between China and New Zealand, that part of the world, and the fact that they, you know, kind of shut their borders early, they have remained without a lockdown, they have done everything right. So I would say Germany and New Zealand in that order would be the two countries that would be wonderful examples of how we have dealt with it. We shouldn't ignore one of our own states. We tend to look outside more often than inside. We shouldn't ignore one or two of our own states. I think Kerala has done a remarkable job. The manner in which they dealt with this pandemic, the early stage and manner in which we did it. Kerala is exemplary. And to some extent, I know it's been a little diluted now, but not to a large extent, even Goa. Even Goa has done a remarkable job. So you can see that, where the population is generally educated and very conscious of three simple things, right? Three simple things. Use the sanitizer, use the mask, and do social distancing. Just three things: social distancing, mask, and sanitizer. You take care of these three things, you fought the pandemic.
Very true. Very true. Well said. And Goa is a fabulous example because sanitizers, alcohol based, and Goa has a lot of alcohol. So no wonder it's safe. People are safe there.
Well, you should know that it's been scientifically and medically proven that consumption of alcohol doesn't provide you protection. It's the use of alcohol in the sanitizer that provides you protection. So let's not get carried away and feel that drinking excess liquor, which is what sometimes Goa signifies.
Mine was a joke though, but anyway. All right. So guys, we've almost run out of time. There are some more questions which we will send them to Ashok and we'll have them answered. So Priya, can I quickly invite you to say a few words and then I'll have Vikash over. Priya, unmute. Huh?
Wow, this was a very, very interesting webinar. We got a lot of insights about the economy, about Mr. Wadhwa himself, and how to look forward to things in this time. So thanks a lot, Mr. Wadhwa, again. I'll hand it over to Vikash to take this ahead. Thanks.
Vikash, closing remarks, please.
So this was really interesting, and I expected it. Didn't expect anything less than this. There are two words which stand out, which he used. Use the word debt 7 times. Use the word reinvent 5 times. So I'm going to focus my closing remarks on debt. People who know me have heard me speaking, have got tired of my talking of debt and to avoid debt. Whenever I stand up to speak, anytime people just snigger and look at each other, we know what is going to talk. But it is about debt. I am completely abhor debt because it is something like a cancer which goes on eating inside while you're running your company. You don't get to know it till you run out of cash. And debt, it sounds very close to death, also the word. So stay away. You don't want to die. Come on. So debt is something, as Mr. Wadhwa said, take equity at any price, but don't take debt. So thank you once again. I don't want to go on talking more about debt because it just adds on to what people expect of me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Vikash. A very big thank you, Ashok. It was a delight to host you. You're on mute, Ashok.
No, thank you very much, Dipesh. Thank you, Vikash. Thank you, Priya, for giving me this opportunity. And ladies and gentlemen, I couldn't see all of you, but thank you for attending the webinar. Delighted to have you present on this occasion. Thank you.
Thank you.